Away, oh hey, away, oh hey, hey, oh, away, oh hey, 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 away, oh hey, 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 away, oh hey, hey, away, oh hey, hey, away, oh hey.
Well, I usually travel with my grandmother. I travel a lot. Last time we were traveling, we went to PEI and we go to Churro and then we came here.
Last year we held a midwinter gathering in our community, and so it was like a committee was made up of my parents, Jews and Mom Migamahan, and my uncle Earl, and so we had put on the gathering in our community of the Ilverbar, and it was so amazing. We were so busy, but it's really nice to come here and to sit back and kind of relax, and I think it's really important that we have these types of gatherings, and especially that the elders are given a chance for them to share their stories. They're really just dying to share that knowledge with people. So it's really nice to come and hear them and see everybody. Our winters are really long, and that it's really important for them to come and we're seeing our medicines again, and it's a really good time.
Yeah, to add to that, I graduated from St. Thomas 2 years ago, and there wasn't really a midwinter gathering like this going on. It's I don't know, it's nice to see because Migamon always talked about having something like this at St. Thomas and getting more of our ceremonies and culture into the university. And to do it this way through grassroots, I think is awesome. And not have the university be the ones doing stuff like this, you know what I mean? Because that's what they're trying to do when they indigenize the academy. It's mostly presidents, VPs that are controlling how we can go about our culture in academia.
I was just having a discussion with my parents about this issue. When I was growing up, there was a photographer that came to take pictures of me and my cousins at the powwow, and he didn't want me in it. He asked me to step out because I didn't look as native as my other cousins did. And it's funny because being here in the city, my sister has I know me and her were both on social development, and they took me in right away and helped me so quickly. And with her, they gave her such a hard time. She had to wait for months and months to get seen because she looks more indigenous than I do. And it's weird seeing that weird, it's almost a struggle for me because I don't look so much native in my community. But I am exposed to a lot of racism from other people because they don't think I'm native. So I get to hear what people have to say. And yeah, it gets people are shocked, but I'm well, I'm native. And they're just whoa. And it's kind of weird how a loved one such as my sister gets treated different. And because I don't, I look different, I'm getting treated with more higher respect or more, provided for. So it's just really confusing and bizarre to live in outside of our communities where my sister's struggling and I'm thriving, and then being in our community and I'm struggling and she's thriving. So it's weird to experience that.
To expand on that, I kind of have a similar sort of experience because Native people know I'm Native. I look Native enough to our people, they know right away. But white people or non-Native people I should say, non-Native people tend to think I don't look Native because I have freckles. It's the only thing, and I know the same for you, people focus on that one feature and they're Native people don't have freckles. I'm I know so many Native people that have freckles. That's completely untrue. Out of the 5 of us here, 3 of us have freckles. It's not an uncommon trait, but it tends to be a misconception, and I get the same thing. My sister, we look alike. Everyone tells us we look the same all the time. They confuse us constantly. But at the same time, people tend to think she looks more Indigenous than I do. And so you end up walking, like you said, like you kind of have one foot in each world. You know, I grew up in ceremony. This is the only life I've ever known. I've always been sober. I've always been with my mom doing this stuff. I don't know anything else. This is my world. But at the same time, I went to schools off reserve. And I had a hard time fitting in with our own people because I was in ceremony. They were, you know, there's so much lateral violence in our communities where people are angry or they're jealous or whatever they're feeling because we've lost so much of our identity, you know, and our people are grasping at straws trying to get it back. And for me, I always felt it. My mom made sure it was instilled in me, so my own people didn't really like me. And then non-Native people, at the same time, I grew up in kind of a racist small town, so I was always felt a little bit on the edges, always. But as an adult and getting, you know, seeing that and being able to look at it retrospectively and sort of see a lot of it, I kind of can see now too how far we've come. You know, I'm only 27, and in the last 10 years, there's been a huge shift. People are interested in Indigenous studies and Indigenous teachings and our history, and people are receptive and more willing. And obviously there's still people that are, you know, racist and resistant, and there's always a pushback, but even our own people are starting to become more open to our stuff. And like, I don't speak my language. I really wish I did. That's a huge piece of me that I feel is missing, but I love listening to it. You know, I've spent so much time with my mother, my grandmother, and my aunties, and I can understand a fair amount, not a lot, but I don't speak it, and it's something I've always felt is missing in my identity. But in the big picture, things seem to be getting better. Like I work in healthcare, and even where I'm learning in school, they're starting to talk about holistic health. And a lot of times, even in my textbooks, they use an example of the medicine wheel. And they really want to shift the focus in healthcare about the fact that there's more than just physical health. When someone's sick, there is a mental and an emotional and a spiritual aspect. And it's amazing to kind of see a bigger picture acceptance of the sort of ideas and core values that I grew up with being reflected now. Because that's not something when I was in high school anyone would have talked about. And now that I'm doing post-secondary, I'm going into nursing and I'm learning about it, they're really trying to push that on us, that it's more than just physical symptoms when somebody's ill. So there's, you know, like I said, there's kind of two sides to it. It's a little bit, you've got, like I said, one foot in each world, and they're starting, for me at least, it's getting easier to walk that road, to stay, you know, to live in a modern world and, you know, that big open sort of thing, and then still keep my values and my teachings and carry that into my life with non-Native people as well.
More ceremony, you know, like ceremony heals, but the individual has to want to heal too. Like you can't force that upon anyone. And so then that would be education before ceremony. Yeah, wouldn't it? Yeah, just to educate our own people of how valuable we are and who we are, and where we're going. Because that's what's missing from my research that I've been doing and community members I've been talking to, is that they don't see the value in our language and our culture and our ways of being. So I think that needs to be restored before we can build on that.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Like, and I feel like, because sometimes people don't feel like there's a lot of people in my community that just like, when they hear anything to do with their culture, they just turn their head the other way. And I think it's about like maybe like reaching out to them and having emotional discussions, because some people feel like they're left out, that nobody is understanding how they're feeling. And I think when people feel understood, they're more open to start like working with other people and about their culture. So I think that'd be really good to start reaching out to people and people know you care and that you understand. There's a lot of emotional dysfunction in our communities, and it affects their whole well-being, and they block out their spirituality. And I think that helped me a lot. You know, I had a lot of people who offered to talk to me And it was really good to feel like I was being heard. And I feel like that's a lot of things that happen in our community, that people don't feel like they're being heard, or that their problems or emotional pain isn't like, it doesn't matter. Like, a lot of people feel like, like they can't really share so much.
It's so true. Like, we could continue to like bring like all these programs or ceremonies into our communities, but the hardest thing is not getting those people who are already there. They're already going to show up already. It's like trying to get those ones who are like at home, who don't feel like that they need to be there, or that they should even, that they belong there. So it's really like they don't understand the value of our ceremonies, how much the language, how connected to the land and to our ceremonies and our histories, and they don't understand it. They don't have the comprehension of how important it is to them and to like their own self-identity. Like our youth are so lost. They don't even know who they are anymore. Like I asked them, I was like, what does it mean to be Mi'kmaq? And like they couldn't tell me, and it was really sad. Like I'm very blessed that I grew up in ceremonies as well, and like, but it's like I see these, like, all these elders are here, like I've known them all my life, but it's like I want to share that with other people, but it's really hard, and it's like it's a different type of like a loneliness, right? Like it's like going traveling places, you're by yourself, but they don't understand that. Like they don't see like the bigger picture. And I think before it is about the education. We have to teach them, like we have to let them know, like they don't understand why they're feeling this way or why they're not connected, and we have to start teaching them and like letting them, and like letting them know, like, this is where we are. It's like it's through ceremonies where we'll find our identity, we'll find out our role as a Mi'kmaq woman or as a Mi'kmaq man, or even like a children. Like they all play such an important part in our societies. And so I really believe that through ceremonies, that's where we have to start off and truly know who we are, and to come back to the songs, and to come back to our languages, and our traditional practices, if it's hunting or gathering, fishing, like whatever it is, like we'll find out who we are through those things that our people has survived on for so many generations.
I think, like, talking about the emotional is it's so true. It all comes down to that emotional, that self-identity, because what happens is so many of our people, they feel that intergenerational trauma, they feel that anger and that sadness, and they can't feel anything else. And a lot of our people, have addictions issues for that reason. They feel that from their ancestors, from their parents, their grandparents, and it it manifests into drug addiction, to alcohol addiction, and abuse in so many forms, and it all comes down, I think, to self-identity. We don't have our self-identity as a whole, as a nation. Obviously there are some of us who have been so fortunate, like all of these beautiful women. We've all been fortunate enough to have other people in our lives show us that and help us find our identities, but so many of our people are missing that, and they're afraid because of that that Western influence. You see, when you think of, what is an Indian? People think of, savages and Pocahontas and Peter Pan and, cowboys versus Indians. You don't think of the positive things right away. And I think we, in our generation, it's our job as young women, as young mothers, to shift that in our children and teach our children that's not us. That is a perception of someone who had no idea what they were looking at. They came in blind and they turned it into something else, and there's this Hollywood pan-Indian thing, and that's not us. We have our own history, we have our own languages, our own teachings. There's prophecies and stories and so much in our culture that really will teach you who you are and to be proud of who you are. And I think so many of our people are missing that, and then it passes on to their children. Like I've worked for quite a few years doing youth work, and you see it so much in kids that act out, kids that have behavioral issues, or and then it comes down, and you look at their parents, and their parents are also lost. And and we need to be that change for us, at least for me, I try that with with my nieces and my nephews, and when I have my own children, I need them to know from the start who they are, that they're important, that they matter, they have their own history, and instilling that self-awareness and that self-pride. If once they're able to love themselves, they're able to love everybody else, and I think that's when the big shift in our people will truly change, is when we learn to love ourselves first.
I'm very emotional, and like if my parents are talking and they say, or my brother and sister are talking to me and they say something that maybe like Evelyn or Grandma, because she was my grandmother and I spent a lot of time with her, and if they say that, I get kind of emotional, because I really used to spend a lot of time with her, because there's after school program on the reserve. They will Mahina went there, I went somewhere else with my grandmother, my grand, because I liked spending time with her. Because if they say that, if they say what they call her or by her real name, I get really emotional.
One of the teachings that was shared when we were there was about how our people, it's kind of, we talk about teachings from the eagle all the time. The eagle is the spirit that brings love, and that's creator's love, and that unconditional love, and that love that binds us all together. And how we, one wing represents the women, one wing represents the men, and that's what keeps that balance, that keeps us floating, that keeps us going. And the head of the eagle represents the children. That's our future, that's where we're looking, that's our focus. And those tail feathers, those are our ancestors. That's what drives us, that's what steers us, that's our root. And if we keep that in mind, that everything, they're always with us. Those spirits have so much to do with what we do in our lives. And they're always there. They're always there for you to call on. I lost my father when I was really young. I was 5 years old when my dad died. People are always like, oh, like you're missing, you're not going to have him at your wedding, you didn't get to dance with him at your prom and all this stuff. But I've never felt like I was really lacking that. Like when I need him, he's there. Those feelings are always there, and they're always there for you to call on. So I've never really felt like I was missing that, and we talk about that with that teachings of the eagle, and I think about that, he's there. He's always there, just behind me and helping and guiding me, and it's just, he's part of that the collection of ancestors and of my family that, keeps me going on this road. And
sometimes when I hear about or learn about what's going on with the water and the pollution and the air and the trees, how chemicals are being sprayed on trees and animals don't know what to eat anymore, I feel hopeless about the future. But when I come here and I hear everybody talking and finding solutions for our future, for our next generations, I feel so hopeful. It overwhelms me because I feel like all that love is just, all that love everybody's carrying and what there's talking, it's like everyone's aware of what's going on, but we have solutions, and it's all about rebuilding. And so when I'm here and I'm feeling like I'm hearing everybody speak, I feel so like, wow, our culture's coming back into our people now, and it's like that's going to restore and replenish the earth, because we're so connected to the earth. And when we're sending out that love to the water, so the water, the molecules and everything is changing and becoming healthier. So I feel like, wow, like the vibration of love is so much powerful than fear. And that's what everybody's so used to living outside of this. Like living out there is like everyone's in a fear-based reality where everyone's scared of things to happen or people or anything. But when we're here, it's just all about connecting and following back what our ancestors have already knew. Even science is catching up to our culture. They're like, oh wow, yeah, the water does have memory in there. Yeah, wow. Like, if we speak to the water, it actually cleans itself. Like, so it's just like amazing. It's so funny when I hear scientists find new discoveries, because I'm like, our ancestors knew about that. I grew up knowing that stuff. So I'm just like amazed. So I feel like there is hope, because people are waking up and they are becoming aware of what's happening. And there are so many people starting to turn to Indigenous people and listening for the first time. And it's just so beautiful. Me and my dad used to always say, like, oh God, we were born 500 years too late. I want to be back where our ancestors were and where the earth was healthy. But then knowing that all this change is happening, it's like, no, I was meant to be born in this era, because this is an era of change, and nothing has ever changed the way this change is happening. So it's huge, it's something huge. We should all be thankful where we are right now, because everything's gonna change. And I'm so proud that I'm gonna be a part of that change.
My teacher's not Native, but he likes listening to me. Like, he likes learning about my culture. My class does too. Like, cause like sometimes we skip math because he likes talking to people. So sometimes we have our math books out and stuff, but he asks us a question, and then everyone keeps adding on to that, and then we keep talking, and like, it's time to go in the gym. We missed math. So yeah, he likes learning about my culture, and he listens. And once he tried a 10-cent cake.
I've been always going around and like visiting my elders and stuff, and just sharing and listening with them, and they're always like, oh, like I have so much hope in you now, like saying that there is hope for our future, and like going to these ceremonies and seeing like little kids, and or being at the Sundance ground and seeing like their children being there as well, and that's really like fulfilling for me, and that gives me that hope too. But also it's really empowering and encouraging when elders, see, they know who we are. The elders will recognize your spirit even like way before we could even get there. And, that's just how spirit works. And so we know who we are, and I think it's really important that we continue to encourage and empower one another, because, at times it is really hard. I talked about that loneliness, that, doing things, we see things in a different way. Like, we walk in two worlds, and we have to find that balance. And, sometimes it's really struggling. There's so much mainstream stuff, and there's so much alcohol and drugs, and, even in the universities, like, how can one thrive there with such a negative environment? But, it's having these types of supports. Like, I went to UMB, but I was always hanging out at STU because of, like, Mi'kmaq and, the Wabanaki Center, and, like, having that community, and having a place where you feel like you belong and that you're important. And, so those are the hopeful things that I'm starting to see in the universities as well. Like, that it's been a long time, but it's coming, and it's very slow, but it's getting there. And I think, to have people like us continuously, working at it, like it's tiring, and we have to always be careful to take care of ourselves as well. And so that's how I really see that hope being developed. It comes in many different ways, like so it's like you have to see things always in a positive manner. It's like
There's a lot of bad things that are like not healthy for you, but they're there for a reason. Because like if you didn't have bad like stuff that's not like healthy and stuff, I wonder what the world will be like. Everything's here for a reason.
Sorry, it's similar for me, seeing what makes me hopeful for the future is seeing this next generation of like, especially our young women, having young women who are doing their coming of age ceremonies, their rites of passage, they're learning to love their bodies, they're learning about water ceremonies and moon ceremonies and things that, that are gifts to women. And sorry, I'm getting emotional. I feel so privileged to be able to share the knowledge that I've learned from so many beautiful elders and teachers with these great ladies like this young lady next to me. And that makes me hopeful that, you know, I carry those teachings now and I can give those on, because I was this young lady not that long ago. So, you know, it feels awesome to be in a stage in my life where I get to start, you know, passing that on and helping shape our next generation. And hopefully, because I feel, you know, we are all part of that rainbow warrior generation that was prophesied, that we are the change in the world. We're here for that shift, that our time is coming again as Aboriginal people, because those prophecies also talk about how every people and every nation holds a piece of that, you know, that whole holistic idea of what we are, and Aboriginal people hold the teachings about the spiritual side of people. And you see the shift now. Like, I have so many non-Native friends that are just fascinated, and they ask me 1,000 questions. Anything happens, they're like, you know, what do you guys do about this? What happens when somebody dies? How do you deal with grief? Like, what do you, like, you know, and there's always people, I find people will even come to me, which I feel still I'm not ready to do that, but you know, they ask me, and I'm like, okay, so this is what I know. But that the world outside of Native people are you know, are becoming receptive to our spirituality and some of our teachings. And, you know, it's not so much like, you know, people that are like pretending to be Native and stuff, you know, it's just, they take those core values and they learn about that. Like when we talk about moon ceremonies, and then they'll ask questions and they'll learn that that's a powerful thing, you know, and they walk away with that. And that's not to go and say, okay, so now all these, you know, white hippie girls are going to go and smudge and talk about their moon time, but they walk away knowing that there's power in that, and they feel that pride instead. And so there's this shift in the world around us as well. It's not, and it's especially great in our people, seeing our people that have this shift. Because when I was young, and my mom introduced some ceremonies to our community, and brought some of our aunties and uncles from out west down to sort of share some of their teachings and bring that back. There was a lot of pushback. People called her a witch. There was all kinds of awful things about her. And now instead what I see is there's so many people I see when they talk about my mom, and they're just like so proud and so full of love, and they talk about her knowledge, and it makes me so proud, you know, that she was so strong and she persevered through all of that garbage, because she cares more about our people, you know, and she put that ahead of herself. Because it could have been easy to walk away from that, you know, being ridiculed and having pushback and nobody giving her any funding and self-funding stuff. There's so many times my mom has paid for flights for people, for teachers to come, that just out of her own pocket, because she cares more about our people's well-being. But what makes me the most hopeful is I see that shift in all of our people. When I was younger, for me, I was like, it was just my mom. I was like, my mom is just kicking butt everywhere, you know, working so hard. But then she introduced me to all of these other beautiful women like your mother, and so many of these wonderful grandmothers. This lady's grandmother, there's so many other strong, wonderful women in other communities that were fighting that same fight. And then you come here and there's a room full of us. And, you know, and back home it was my mom and my aunties, and that was it. And you know, in the 20 years that I've been going to ceremony with my mom, it has grown. And it is amazing, and it is beautiful, and that gives me hope. All of it. You know, you see there's so many big things changing. So you look at the big picture, and it's all hopeful. There's this big shift and this big change happening in the world and in our smaller world as Indigenous people, and it's just awesome.